Good evening, everyone. Today, we are going to discuss one of the very important chapter in biology, that is our environment. It's based on a general science, but it's very scoreable chapter. And in board exams, um, quite a good amount of mark is allotted to this chapter, and students score very good marks in this topic also. Mainly being, it's a very common topic and have been continuously studying since many years. So obviously, it is a very known topic. So once you are, if you are brushing up slightly, this is a very scoreable chapter. So let me go through the major aspects of this chapter. Yes. This chapter revolves around what is an ecosystem. An ecosystem consists of three major components. One is producer, consumer, and um, decomposers. Producers are the basic of any ecosystem, and there is an interrelation between the living organisms and the non-living things. So this forms a system which is self-sustaining, and that system is what we call as the ecosystem. One of the major characteristics of an ecosystem is that an ecosystem does not take anything from outside. It does not give anything outside. That means it is self-sustaining. The materials which are available in the ecosystem will be circulating in the ecosystem. The only thing that it takes from outside is energy, and that that energy is supplied by the sun. In majority of the cases, the plants are the first step in ecosystem, and they are the one that can convert light energy into chemical energy, and that chemical energy is passed into the ecosystem, into the food chain or food web, and that is the driving force of an ecosystem. When the plants and animals they die, their body decomposed by decomposers, and the nutrients are returned back to the soil. The same nutrients are being consumed by, it is being utilized by another set of plants. Okay, so there is a continuous cycling of material within an ecosystem, and there is a continuous supply of energy from outside. So these are some of the characteristics of an ecosystem. An ecosystem consists of biotic components and abiotic components and their interrelationship. The major biotic components are producers, consumers, and decomposers. And the abiotic components are those components which are helping the biotic factors. There are two terminologies being used very commonly. One is abiotic components and other one is non-living things. Not every non-living things are abiotic components. What can be called as abiotic components? Abiotic components are those materials which helps an organism to survive. Take for example, a table or a chair or a pen or a book are non-living things, but they are not abiotic components. Why are they not abiotic components? Because they are not required for the sustenance of life of any organism. Whereas water is essential. Without water, organism will not survive. Air is essential, or oxygen is essential, or soil is essential for the survival of plants. So these all things forms the abiotic components. Okay, biotic components can be divided into three major categories based on whether they are based on their roles they are doing. Producers are those organisms which can convert um, uh, uh, the light energy majorly into chemical energy, and they produce a lot of food in the nature which can be consumed by some other organisms. All the other organisms which cannot produce their own food and depend on another organism, they all are coming under consumers. And decomposers have a role just opposite to producers. And what is it? They convert the organic materials into inorganic materials. So on one side, we have producers which convert inorganic chemicals into organic food. And on the other side, we have decomposers which are converting inorganic materials into organic materials into inorganic nutrients, which can further be absorbed by plants again. So that decomposers ensures that the nutrients are supplied back to the soil. Okay. So within an ecosystem, no material is taken from outside, no material is given outside. That is why whenever we are talking about agriculture, we consider agriculture as a non-eco-friendly activity. Though we may think that in agriculture we are growing a lot of plants, but still we do not consider it as an eco-friendly activity. It's a non-eco-friendly activity. The reason being that after doing the agriculture, you are collecting the product from that, and that product is taken out of the field. It is taken far off distances. For example, we get say fruits, say oranges, all the way from Nagpur. So the nutrients which were there in the soil of Nagpur has transported all the way to different parts of India. Now that need to be replenished there. So we are cultivating plants, collecting products, and then that products are not returned back to the ecosystem there. It will go back to an ecosystem obviously, but it may not be the same ecosystem. So two ecosystems are getting disturbed. One, the ecosystem from where we have taken the material out, that ecosystem is disturbed. And second, the ecosystem where the materials are returned back. So why? Because that ecosystem will have an addition of material from an external environment, which was not a part of the ecosystem. Okay, so that is why we do not consider it as an eco-friendly activity. And there are two major kinds of ecosystems. One is natural ecosystem, and the other one is artificial ecosystem. If natural ecosystems are not disturbed by human being, they are mostly self-sustaining, like forests, desert, grasslands, mountains, ponds, lakes, rivers, oceans. All of them are ecosystems. Whenever we are saying using the word ecosystem, sometimes it happens that a picture comes to our mind that an ecosystem should have a lot of plants, a lot of nutrients, highly mm, flourished conditions, green in color, with a lot of plants, right? But it is not always compulsory. Desert is also an ecosystem. Now we know what is the condition of a desert, right? The plants are very scarce, and animals are also not visible so easily. Okay, maybe most of them are coming out at night time only, but still there is an ecosystem. The organisms which are surviving in desert are surviving there because they can survive there. There is no compulsion. Animals which are found in desert, there is no compulsion is there that no, they can't leave desert. Okay, if they are not getting the requirement conditions or the requirements that they need, for example, the adequate temperature, the places to live, the food supply, if these things are not there, they will automatically move out. So they are living there because that is an ecosystem, and they are a part of that ecosystem. Okay, so it is not always compulsory that an ecosystem should be always green and flourish, right? It may have different forms. Artificial ecosystems can be developed, but unfortunately it is very difficult to maintain a balance in the nature, because they are artificial ecosystems like gardens, parks, crop fields, these kinds of things. There is something or the other thing is missing. For example, in gardens, we keep on adding fertilizers, manures. We put in a lot of material into the garden, and sometimes from garden we collect back many materials, maybe flowers, or for keeping the garden clean, we remove the dead leaves and clean the garden. Again, we are taking out the material from there. Okay, so the dead leaves which are fallen from the plant, the flowers after blooming, they fall off, and that also it should go back to the soil air itself. Because human beings are doing it artificially, we remove one or the other part from that, and that is why none of them are eco-friendly activities. Okay, parks, crop fields, aquarium. We use only one component of the ecosystem in an aquarium, and that is the consumers. We don't grow plants in an aquarium, so producers are not there. We don't keep microorganisms for decomposing the waste material in an aquarium, so the decomposers are also missing. So two components of the ecosystem is not present. So if you want to continue with such an ecosystem, we will have to do the work. That is why we have to keep on feeding the fish in an aquarium, whereas we don't need to feed a fish in a natural pond. They find the food there. Similarly, we need to keep on cleaning the aquarium. Why? Because we have to do the work of decomposers, whereas a natural pond does not require any cleaning. So whatever component we are separating out, we will have to do the work. In a zoo, there may be many different varieties of animals. There are many, very wild animals also. Carnivores animals are also. If we are not providing them food, they will die. Why? They are in captivity, and some part of the ecosystem you have removed. So if you want to keep them alive, you will have to replace the work. So we provide them food, we clean their cages or the place where they live, okay, and then they are surviving in the zoo. So all of them are non-eco-friendly. Then within an ecosystem, there is a flow of energy, and that flow of energy can be represented as a food chain. Most of the food chains are about 5 or a maximum 6 levels, which are called as the trophic levels. Long, not beyond that. The reason being, there is a law called the 10 percentage law. The 10 percentage law. What is this 10 percentage law saying? That 10 percentage law says that whenever energy moves from one trophic level to the next, only 10 percentage is going to the next trophic level. And rest of 90 percentage of energy is not going to the next level. Now, when we are saying that it is not going to the next level, that does not mean that it is getting destroyed. The energy will never get destroyed. And 90% of the energy either is unable to go to the next level, or it is consumed by the first level itself. Take, for example, the grass is eaten by cricket. Now, cricket, let me take the example of cricket. Cricket has some amount of energy, and this cricket is going to be eaten away by a bird. Now, whatever energy the cricket is having, out of that energy, only 10% is going to go to the body of bird. Where is the 90% gone? Number one, the 90% energy may be utilized by the cricket itself, by jumping and flying and making its body organs, respiration, the physiological activities of its body, so many other things. Secondly, even if the bird is eating the cricket, not all parts of the cricket can be digested. There will be some part of the cricket's body which is very hard, cannot be digested. And because of that, what happens? It comes out as waste material or ingestion. So that also contains energy. Or the energy that has received by cricket from the grass was utilized for making those hard parts also. And because of that, energy is still stuck there. Okay, so that is how they the 90% of the energy is blocked here and there. Limits the food chain to 5 or 6 levels only. Many food chains can join together, club together, and can form a food web. There is an interconnection between many organisms, and that makes a food web. An organism which is well connected with other members of the nature, or an organism which has got multiple sources of food, will be surviving in the nature better than another organism which does not have much options, or which does not depend on many options. Okay. So a food web stabilizes the organism. Every food chain, every ecosystem will have some levels of organisms. The lowest form strata will be of producers, and the number of producers will be maximum. Then comes the primary consumers, secondary consumers, and the tertiary consumers. And depending on the number, we can draw many different pyramids. For example, the pyramid of energy, the pyramid of population, right, is known by different names. Okay, and the pyramid of biomass, different names is given to depending on what component are you um, showing in the ecosystem or the pyramid. This is showing the energy flow in the pyramid. So in any ecosystem, minimum one member from each category is essential. There should be producers, there should be consumers, and there should be decomposers. Okay, here it is showing an example of the 10% law, that for example the producers has 1000 kilocalorie of energy. They can transmit only 10% of their energy to the next trophic level. But interestingly, out of the total amount of energy available to the producers can convert only 1% of that into chemical energy. The remaining 99% of the sunlight which is available to the earth is going unutilized. But their number is so large that that would be sufficient to supply food to all living organisms on the earth. If they are unable to supply food to all living organisms on the earth, the living organisms will reduce in number. Except human being, rest all living organisms are under the control of the nature. One of the major factor that is controlling the number is the availability of food. Organisms flourish when there is excess amount of food, and organism will limit their number in nature when there is less number of food, amount of food. Now, second part of this system, this chapter is dealing with ozone layer depletion. One very important thing that is happening in the nature. It was identified in 1970s and 1980s, and we have made some rules so that the amount of ozone should not decrease. What exactly happening is ozone molecule is nothing but O3. O3 is a poisonous gas, but luckily its density is very less, so it rises up in the atmosphere and settles down somewhere nearer to the stratosphere. That means around 15 to 17 or 20 kilometers above the sea level. But when ultraviolet radiations fall on them, the ozone, the oxygen molecule breaks into oxygen atoms, and this oxygen atom can combine with another oxygen atom, oxygen molecule, to form O3. This, when reaches the stratosphere, there it receives ultraviolet radiations from the sun. Sun releases large number of radiations, and one of the major radiations are ultraviolet radiations. And these ultraviolet radiations are high energy waves, and if it is reaching the earth directly, it can be extremely harmful. Luckily, a large amount of this ultraviolet radiations on the way to earth hit on the ozone particles, and the energy of the ultraviolet radiations will be utilized for breaking the ozone into oxygen atoms. So thereby we sometimes say that ozone layer filters out ultraviolet radiations. It's actually not filtering out. It's not filtering out as if we are filtering tea by using a tea strainer or something. No, it's not like that. The energy of UV radiations are consumed in breaking down ozone molecule into oxygen. Oxygen plus O, O2 plus O. Okay, so the energy has been utilized. Now it does not have energy. When there is no energy, then as far as the radiation is concerned, there is no radiation, because radiations are nothing but a beam of energy. And if the energy has been utilized, has been converted into some other form, then there is no more radiation. And similarly, we can say that the ozone filters out or absorb away or consumes the energy of ultraviolet radiation from the sun and protects the earth. If excess amount of ultraviolet radiations reaches the earth, then it can result in many problems with the health of human being and other animals. Its direct exposure to our body can make changes in the DNA sequence, and it can also cause damage to many tissues, and that can result in many kind of skin diseases, including skin cancer. One of the increased number of the reason behind increased number of cataract cases in India and the nearby countries, maybe of Pakistan, Sri Lanka, or any of those such countries, African countries, which are lying nearer to the equator, is excess amount of ultraviolet radiations, because most of the year the equatorial region receives sunlight directly, whereas in the polar region the sunlight receives slanting. And because of that, what happens? Adequate amount of, or large quantities of ultraviolet radiations also does not reach the polar regions. So the European countries, American countries, or Canada, Russia, or these kinds of countries is not much affected. But the countries which are in the equatorial region will be affected by this excess amount of radiation. Okay. So one of the culprit in that, which is human made, is CFC, chlorofluorocarbons. Chlorofluorocarbons are used in refrigerators, fire extinguishers. Okay, as in many kind of aerosols. But some of the observations by scientists and in their presentation in one of the convention, it has been decided that the CFC level in the atmosphere should be kept as it was there in 1986. Okay, many countries very forcefully implemented this and has controlled the amount of CFC in the nature. And because of that, in the last few years, we are seeing that the ozone layer is again increasing in quantity, and it is spreading to such areas where the ozone layer was not actually present, especially over Antarctica and all. The ozone layer was completely thin and almost nil. But now we can see that it is spreading towards that, and we say that the gaps which were developed in the ozone layer has been filled up. Okay, or almost it has been filled up. Another major components that has been explained in this chapter is regarding waste management. There are two different types of waste: biodegradable waste and non-biodegradable waste. Whenever we are uh, doing our daily course or running an industry or doing agriculture, producing food or processing food or anything like that, it produces a lot of pollution. If human beings are not there or not producing pollution, or it is not spreading pollution, probably there will be no waste in the environment at all. That is why we have to keep on cleaning our cities. And if we are not cleaning the cities, a city will be very dirty. But nobody cleans a forest. But still, forests are never dirty. Why? Because other organisms does not spread pollution like human being. Human being collect materials from different areas and then they spread it out or they collect it at a place, they process it and converts them into some harmful chemicals, and these harmful chemicals are accumulated at some areas, and that creates a problem. Biodegradable wastes are those which can be somehow returned back to the environment with the help of microorganisms. Whereas non-biodegradable wastes are the wastes which cannot be processed by the microorganisms. Biodegradable wastes are mostly organic in nature and they are a part of a kind of food or a plant or something like that. Whereas non-biodegradable wastes are normally made from some non-living things or petroleum products or anything which does not have life in it. And that is why living organisms cannot work on it. One of the major method of reducing pollution is to manage the pollution at its point of origin. One of the major techniques that nowadays we are using is landfills. Landfills are normally used for collecting large amount of waste and then we fill it up. And after many um, years or many months, once the land gets filled with the waste material, we can cover it up and that land can be utilized for some other purposes. But there are certain concerns related to this. Number one, if the landfills are filled with some chemicals or plastic or some dangerous chemicals which can leach out into the underground water, then that can create pollution even after you disposing it off. Okay, so this is a problem. Second problem with uh, this kind of landfills is that over a period of time, these materials may compress and can change their properties and may squeeze themselves. For example, if you have a lot of plastic or something, it can undergo oxidization and can convert into can change its shape, structure, texture, and the total volume. Yes, that can also be. So there are chances that once you filled up the land or you made a pit and then you placed all the waste material into it and then covered the pit with soil or you have repeated this many times and then the soil has been or that land has been converted into some other thing, there is still a chance that it will sink down, it will press down because the interior layers are made up of softer materials. So if we are doing this, it is preferred that we will do it some at some places where these kinds of things are not affected. For example, while making an overbridge, we can fill the gap which is developed due to the difference in the height. Yes, the touching areas of the roads are normally filled with soil. So instead of soil, if this processed waste can be used, we may convert all the non-biodegradable waste into very fine powdery materials and maybe looking almost like soil or something like that. And then that can be filled, maybe mixed with soil and then filled. And then because such kind of constructions are going to be there as it is for many years, at least 25, 30 years, an overbridge or any that kind of structure will survive. So if there is a place that it can be buried under that, then that would be better. Recycling is another technique that we can do. Okay, Many of the non-biodegradable waste can be recycled. One of the most common one is plastic or glass. These things cannot be recycled. Sorry, it cannot be decomposed, but it can be recycled. It can be used again. Mm. There are certain materials which are natural in nature, but it cannot be reused, it cannot be recycled, and it is non-biodegradable also. For example, one such material is clay. Which clay? The baked clay. Clay we are normally using for making many utensils. Few years back, the Indian Railways have started that to reduce the number of plastic cups, or to reduce the use of plastic. Indian Railways has introduced cullets. Cullets are the earthen cups, so that once you take tea in that and drink, after that you can simply throw it out. It's made up of soil, and it is natural material. It can be placed back into the resin. This was what they have thought, but in reality, what happened that the clay need to be baked for while making uh, this cooler. They have to bake the clay. Once the clay has been heated at high temperature, then it hardens. Once it has hardened, it loses all the properties of soil. Then it becomes a non-biodegradable material. Once it has become a non-biodegradable material, it's not like plastic. It cannot be reused. It cannot be reused. Okay. So that has created a lot of problem. Moreover, for making such the people who are making it, they have started using a large amount of topsoil, and topsoil is the most important soil for plants, that contains all the its most fertile soil. Okay, so that has been used up for making coolers. So the Indian Railways has stopped its use few years back. Production of biogas and manure, yes, this can be done for the organisms, the waste of organisms which are larger in quantity. For example, the cow dung or the dung of buffalo or any such animals can be used for that. And that can be allowed to undergo fermentation under controlled condition, and then that can produce um, biogas and manure. Preparation of compost. Yes, that is another method of decomposing the waste material. This can be very easily been done at home. If we are segregating the waste into different components, and then the biodegradable waste, that which does not contain salt in it. When we are talking about biodegradable waste, it should not contain the cooked food. Cooked food normally contains salt in it, right? That can kill all the microbes. So without using that, without you can go for the agricultural waste or any such kinds of waste which can be decomposed by living organisms, and then we can go for compost making. And once it has been converted into compost, compost is a very useful manure. Incineration is a technique normally used by in hospitals, and in this technique, the plastic materials like syringes, needles, or that kind of things are heated at a very high temperature without bringing it in contact with aerial oxygen. If it is coming in contact with oxygen, it will catch fire and will convert into something else. So instead of that, and it can produce very dangerous chemicals also. Burning of plastic is not good. Okay, so instead of that, in the absence of oxygen, if when you are heating the instrument at a very high temperature, changes the property, and it becomes useless. Means, for example, syringes, if you are afraid that it will be reused by some people, then you can send it for incineration. Once incineration has been done, then it changes the entire shape. Okay, so it is not usable. It might shrink and can convert into a very hard structure, or it may deform itself and then it will be of no use. Sewage treatment plants, that they are normally very big in setup, because it is normally done by government agencies for cleaning the wastewater of an entire city. Okay, sewage treatment plants, huge sewage treatment plants are available. So these are some of the pictures showing the different kinds of landfills. Incinerator, sewage treatment plants that can purify water in the entire city. Two more terminologies associated with this chapter, which very often asked in the exam, is biological magnification or biomagnification. This happens mainly because the non-biodegradable materials, they will keep on accumulating in the body of one organism, and then one organism is consumed by another organism as food. Then these non-biodegradable materials enters into the second trophic level. For example, if a farmer has sprayed insecticides in his field for controlling the attack of insects on his crop, and let's imagine that there were so many insects in the field, and every insect has drank one drop of poison and they died. And let us imagine that there are frogs in this field, and one frog has eaten 10 such insects. So the total amount of poison in the body of frog is now 10. Similarly, if there are snakes in the same place, let's imagine that snakes have started eating frogs, which were killed by consuming the poison eaten grasshoppers. Okay, so let us imagine that one snake has eaten 10 such frogs. So every frog has got 10 drops of poison, and such 10 frogs were eaten away by the snake. And that means the snake's body right now has 100 drops of poison. 10 into 10, 100 drops of poison. So you can see the total amount of poison keeps on increasing from lower trophic level to higher trophic level, and that is what we call as biomagnification. This is called magnification, biomagnification. Another term associated with that is eutrophication. Eutrophication is a very complex phenomena where it all starts again with human activity. Human being use fertilizers and insect nutrient providing materials, manures and fertilizers to the crop plants. But if it is used in excess amount, then that will leach out into the nearby water bodies. And in the water bodies, they will trigger the growth of algae, which can result in a condition called the algal bloom. Algal bloom, a large quantity of algae starts growing in it. Now, the problem with algae is that they are seasonal. After a particular season, they die. When they die, they settle down to the bottom of the water body. There it undergoes decomposition. And the decomposition uses a lot of oxygen. It contains a lot of oxygen or aerobic bacteria also. And they use up a large amount of oxygen from the soil. And this will develop a biological oxygen demand in water. And because of that, what happens? The other aquatic organisms is unable to get oxygen, and majority of them die. Okay, so a very small mistake from the part of human being. It triggers a long problem, and that is what we call as eutrophication. Okay. Emergency in Florida, the worst outbreak in years of toxic allergens. Let me share the audio also. That's
A state of emergency in Florida.
The worst outbreak in years of toxic algae.
Green, slimy, smelly, and flat out dangerous invasion.
100% horror.
Manatees struggling to move.
Thousands of dead fish.
Dolphins, sea turtles, even a 26-foot whale shark.
Some residents complaining of headaches, respiratory issues, and even rashes.
The pungent algae bloom stretches for about 150 miles,
growing bigger and lasting longer than years before.
This is one of the example of what is algal bloom and what is eutrophication. Okay, that finishes the major components of this chapter. If you have any queries related to this topic, you can ask me. Otherwise, the major component, theoretical portions of this chapter has been covered.